Research has shown the excessive use of social media can lead to feelings of anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem. Algorithms are designed to keep us hooked, constantly craving that dopamine hit from every like and share. Social media is broken. We're not going to put our time and efforts into something that doesn't help us grow.
This is the Podcast in the Rough. Tune in every Friday for new adventurous episodes.
All right, welcome back to another great episode of the Podcast in the Rough. I'm your host, Zebulon Thomas, and this is episode 148. And today I'm tackling another mental health topic. This episode is about the impact of likes, shares, and views on our mental health. In today's digital age, social media has become a big part of our daily lives. But with the constant attention drawn towards likes, shares, and views, it's easy to get caught up in the never-ending cycle of validating, seeking behavior. What many don't realize is the toll it can take on our mental well-being, and I myself has experienced this firsthand, and I would love to know in the comments if you are experiencing any type of social media burnout, overwhelm, frustration, depression, or anxiety due to your involvement with social media. So I definitely want to know. Please comment below. Research has shown the excessive use of social media can lead to feelings of anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem. Every like or share becomes a measure of our worth, and when those numbers don't meet our expectations, it can leave us feeling inadequate. So how do we protect our mental health in a world obsessed with online validation? Well, I have some tips here that I've put together that I feel will help you in your daily pursuit of social media, whatever that is online, whether you're a user and you're just absorbing content or you're a content creator. And I will say it weighs heavier on content creators. Number 1, limit your time on social media. Set boundaries for yourself and designate specific times to engage with social media. Remember, your worth is not defined by the number of likes or shares that you receive. Even if you're doing exceptionally well on social media, it does not define who you are and your worth. I just want to double down on that because you might find yourself in a position where you're doing really, really well. And then one day, all those social media likes and shares are gone, or they take a dip because someone changed the algorithm and the platform's not favoring you or whatever that is. And then all of a sudden you feel like you're less than. And I don't want you to feel that way. Number 2, focus on real life connections. Nurture relationships offline and prioritize face-to-face interactions. Genuine connections with friends and loved ones can provide more meaningful validation than any social media metric. It's very important to understand this when you sit down for a business meeting, to get together with a friend over a cup of coffee, or at the dinner table with your family. Put down the phone, put down the social media, and nurture these relationships. Have deep connections and more meaningful conversations, and that'll really help you outside of social media. Number 3, find value beyond social media. Explore hobbies and interests that bring you joy outside the digital realm. Your worth and success extend far beyond the confines of likes and shares. Personally, my goal is to leave social media altogether, to become so successful with my business and my brands and my other endeavors that I can literally put the phone down, never look at social media again, and go out there and live this thing called life that is really happening, that has a time limit on it. I want to enjoy that. Now, as a content creator, it's easy to be caught up in the endless pursuit of online recognition. But remember, the algorithms are designed to keep us hooked, constantly craving that dopamine hit from every like and share. Also, if you're not contributing to these social media platforms, if you're not feeding it content, if you're not liking other people's content, sharing other people's content, commenting other people's content, if you're not in that daily grind, then the social media platforms will not favor your content. Meaning you don't have to be shadow banned to be pushed to the back of the line. It simply just shows that, hey, if you're not constantly on this platform, if you're not investing all your time, your most valuable resource into this platform, then we're not going to give you the boost anymore. We're not going to show your content to your friends and family and people that you want to reach and prospects and potential clients and that audience that you're going for. So you have to either pay to play or participate to play. So if you've seen your likes and shares drop and you're like, why? Why is no one seeing my content? It's because you're not participating enough. And they'll say, oh, it's because your content is not good enough. How about your content is good enough if you feel it's good enough? Again, it's designed to get us to chase something that isn't really out there. Like, hey, there's this mysterious group of people that are going to like this high-end content at all times. When have you ever really connected with someone that is only obsessed with the highest end content and will not look at anything else? That's a flat out lie, because humans are diverse. Everybody wants a diversity in their content, in their exposure, and what they learn and what they attach to at different times of their lives. So your content that you're putting out is good enough. It's just not reaching the people that will enjoy it because they're not letting you participate because you're not actively engaging in the platform. And if you are actively engaging, then it might be a misuse of a hashtag, or it might be the time of day. Again, they want you to lock into this social media rat race and stay on this hamster wheel or this treadmill, if you will, and constantly just throw your life away, all your time. When I post content, I'm speaking to the people that are just like me. You should be speaking to the people that are just like you or that fit that thing that you're posting up. If you're posting about a certain book, maybe it's a novel, maybe it's educational, those individuals, that audience, relate to your content and they will absorb it. And they will be there and they will like it and they will share it. The problem is it's not getting to them. It's not getting to them because the algorithm is completely broken. So all your efforts are being wasted just because of a bot and an algorithm that is not allowing you to get that exposure. It'd be kind of like driving down the street in an ice cream truck and all the kids want the ice cream, but they've covered your truck with mirrors and they won't let you play music. And so the kids are in the neighborhood looking around for this ice cream. They can't see you because you're reflective and you just look like the neighborhood. And they can't hear you because your music is off. But you're still supposed to be able to sell ice cream. And so you're cruising around and you're driving by and you're not allowed to engage. You're not allowed to say, hey, over here. You just got to hope that they walk forward and run into this mirror and go, oh, there's an ice cream truck here. I want some ice cream. That's my analogy of how social media is working right now. And hopefully that helped. But literally, that's what it is. And so that's why myself and a lot of the people that I'm around, we've all come to the conclusion that social media is broken. We can't wait for the new thing. And in the meantime, we're not going to put our time and efforts into something that doesn't help us grow. So we're seeking it elsewhere outside of social media. We're having a blast doing it. And here's the thing. Podcast is something I really enjoy doing. And I'll continue to do that and I'll post it places, but I'm not concerned about the likes, shares, or views. If people really want to engage the podcast, they're on the podcast platforms that so far have not been corrupted with this algorithm and with this overflex of favoring the brands and advertisers instead of the content creators. So my audience is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, mainly Apple Podcast. And that's why I love to encourage people to leave me a review. Let other people know that this podcast is something that's exciting and that they would like it too. And the star rating helps. So that's how you help us boost, because that's how that system, that platform works. And so as of right now, yes, podcast is the way to go. And when you spill into YouTube, you start to spill into that marketing and advertisement favored media, but you can still grow on YouTube. And podcast is good to have it on there. But podcast belongs on Apple Podcast or Spotify, if you ask me, or other podcast-dedicated platforms, not so much YouTube. But YouTube is growing and they're expanding. And there is a new thing. There is a YouTube podcast section, and I haven't played with it yet 100%. Check it out. My problem with that is it might drown out my YouTube channel and make it look washed out, kind of like shorts have done on YouTube. I really think that just looks like trash when you're viewing a YouTube channel and you see all these vertical videos. It just looks garbage to me. It doesn't look cinematic. That's just me though. And I don't see the point in that. If I wanted shorts, I'd go to Instagram or TikTok, not YouTube. But there you go. They're testing something out. And so far it's sticking. So it is what it is. So I want to get back a little bit to the concept of feeling overwhelmed, burned out, anxiety, depression due to social media. And if you find yourself feeling burnout or any of these emotions with the social media game, it might be time to reassess your priorities. Your mental health should always come first. And like I shared with you a little bit ago, I myself am pulling back from social media and I don't want to play their game. So when is it time to step away from social media altogether? Listen to your intention, your gut feeling. If it's no longer bringing you joy or serving your greater purpose, it might be time for you to explore other avenues. And remember, success is not defined by the number of followers or likes you have. True fulfillment comes from living authentically and aligning your actions with your values. And before I wrap up today's episode, let me take a moment to remind you that it is okay to prioritize your mental health. Seek support from friends, family, or even a professional if you are struggling. It's so important to put yourself first, and that is the first step to doing that. And I want to throw in a few plugs real quick and then give you some important updates about this podcast and what's been going on behind the scenes. Okay, once again, if you would like to join me inside the Podcast Community Mastermind Facebook group, it is absolutely free. All you have to do is go to thepodcastintherough.com/learn. That is thepodcastintherough.com/learn, and get inside the group and learn how to podcast from start to success. If you'd like to support this podcast, buy me a coffee by heading over to buymeacoffee.com/intherough and become part of the adventure by showing your support and taking advantage of any one of our exciting membership tiers. The Podcast in the Rough. All right, if you're enjoying this podcast episode, I would love for you to give me a rating and review about this podcast by heading over to thepodcastintherough.com and scrolling to the bottom of the page and leaving us a review. Or if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a star rating and a review. It would help us reach more people and get them to learn about the Podcast in the Rough. Thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it. All right, and now some important updates that's been going on behind the scenes of this podcast. A lot of things have been changing. First and foremost, the show notes, they're going away. I'm taking the show notes away. There hasn't been a lot of attention on the show notes. And listen, they're good to get you traction, SEO, and all that great stuff. But I don't enjoy doing the show notes, and I try to make them enjoyable. I always say take something you don't like and find a way to make it the best you can make it and have the most fun doing it. And I think what it came down to is just being able to show that I have something extra and I have a blog, and I didn't have, every time I have a blog on my website, I'm like, what do I do with the blog? I love blogging, but I never really 100% engage in the blog like I'd like to. So I tried the show notes and I put that on the blog, on the website. And there wasn't enough traction for me to continuously feed that type of time and energy into the show notes. And I really streamlined. I had it down to a T. I do like the fact that I could share the cover art of each episode. That was kind of exciting. But again, if it's not getting the view, I could just put the cover art in my Buy Me a Coffee and leave it for premium content or something if people really want to see how that's done. But other than that, the show notes are going away. So they're done. They're gone. And I think the blog is going away too. So we're going to get rid of the blog. On the other hand, the website is also being updated. Now, this is an update that comes with a little bit of pulling back because, obviously I invest monthly into a website platform. But the podcast show has not been getting a lot of support financially. And I encourage you, if you would like to support the show, we got to keep the lights on for the podcast, to keep the website going and all that stuff. I got to have some funding. And so the funding has not been there. Instead of me constantly coming out of pocket for this website, I'm shifting gears a little bit and we'll bring it back. We still have the website. I own that. It's great. But I'm shifting the website into a different platform that doesn't cost me money. And there's limitations to it, but I'd love to get your feedback on this too. I love the current state of the website, and it'll be like that for the next probably like 30 days, the current website. Take a look at the new update when it comes out. I'll put a post up on my social media, or I'll just say it in one of these episodes here when it happens. But I built the website out, and there's pros and cons. The new current website that we have, I love it because every episode is populated automatically, and each one gets its own page as well without me having to do anything at all. Like, it's amazing. And I like that you can listen to the episodes, share the episodes, fast forward the episodes, all this good stuff. And ideally, that's where you'd want your website to be. So I've dialed that back because, again, there's no support. Now, if we get support between now and the next 30 days through Buy Me a Coffee platform, and you can access premium content that way, then some of that money is going to go towards, actually most of the money is going to go towards the website at this point. And then in the future, if we need anything else, but mainly just keeping the website going. But that brings me to my next question. So I've built this other website out, and I do like some of the functionalities. And I'm like, okay, I used to code. It's just a little bit more work. So I've been building it out to automate a lot of things, and I figured out how to use that RSS feed on the website that has its own built-in player, and it's not something that comes from like Apple Podcast or Spotify because they have their own, player you can embed into your website. It just didn't look right. So I did my best, and I think it looks great. I think it's there. But really, when I started doing this and I started questioning this website, I started thinking to myself, like, anybody really going to the website? And so I started looking at the views, and a lot of people you guys are just listening to this on Apple Podcasts, which I 100% love that. That's fine. Apple Podcasts and Spotify, a lot of people are not going to the website. So the website becomes, like a podcast website, becomes basically just a form of marketing to, get you on Google and let people know, hey, you have a podcast, and they discover, it's discoverability. Like, people can discover you and your podcast through a website, through Google search. So that's nice. But again, podcasts are meant for podcast platforms. So I don't personally feel at this point that the website needs to be up right now with all the bells and whistles to be discovered. I can still make it discoverable with the SEO and all the coding I can put on a website that doesn't cost me any money. So again, eventually it was kind of like a long, oh man, I don't want to really get rid of this website. I want to dump it. But I set a goal for myself, and the goal was that this podcast has to support itself, and the funding is not there. So I just have to do more of my efforts on just reminding more people, hey, if you want to support this podcast, then I got to do better content and add more to my premium content because it's all there. And I've lowered the rates of my Buy Me a Coffee. It used to be up there, dropped them way down. I want this to be extremely affordable, especially in today's economy. If I'm asking for your money, I want to give you a lot of value, right? But I also don't need to take a lot of your money, right? I don't need to gouge you. I don't want to be, that person. It just a little bit here helps. So definitely check that out, the buymeacoffee.com/intherough. That's how you show your support. And I've considered, and I have it in the back burner, setting up the Patreon account. But right now, I really want Buy Me a Coffee to go big. I want it to go big because I love that platform. It feels good. But a lot of people are not warmed up to Buy Me a Coffee yet, and they're more, warmed up to Patreon. So again, comment below or in the Facebook group, do you prefer Patreon? Does it not matter? Can you still invest in Buy Me a Coffee if you wanted to donate? I like Buy Me a Coffee because you can literally go in there and go, I'm going to just donate. I don't need to be a part of a tier. I don't need access to premium content. I just like the show. I'm just going to slide you, $2, $3, $4, $5, whatever it is. And you could buy me a coffee. So I like that setup, and I like the way it sounds. Coffee and podcast. There we go. So that's been the update. And I'm just being transparent with you on this podcast. I want this podcast to grow and support itself. Now, if I never get the funding, that's fine. I'm still going to do the podcast because I love podcasting. It's just not going to look so pretty on a website, right? But I teach this all the time. You don't need funding to get your podcast going. So hear me when I say this. This is not saying that I have to have all this money or the podcast doesn't work. I'm just saying if I want the bells and whistles, if I want the website, if I want these paid things, these paid platforms to place my podcast on and give you more of an experience, then I'm going to need funding for that. But you starting out do not need funding. You might go to the point where you're putting your own money into it, and then you realize, okay, I got that to where it needs to go. That's cool. It didn't work out. I'm going to dial back. But then you go back to the foundation, and that's where you're running your podcast, and you don't need all that. Remember, you have Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and a slew of other podcast platforms to get your podcast reach out there. You don't need to spend money on this. Where you spend your money is going to be on a microphone and a mixer. Okay, I just want to bring that back. Microphone and a mixer, make the quality sound good if you're going to spend money. If not, you can get away with just doing the bare minimum and making great, excellent content and having fun doing it. And if you want more advice on that, there's 2 ways to get it. Go back and binge listen to some of the previous episodes I did about developing a podcast, and get inside the Podcast Community Mastermind group. You heard the ad just a little bit ago. I'd love to have you in the group, and I'm growing this small community. I love it. Other than that, that is all I have for you for today's episode. I hope this really helped you out, and I look forward to connecting with you next week for another great episode of the Podcast Rough. Take care. This is the Podcast in the Rough.